This is I Am Change podcast. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. There is zero success without change. Be the change you want to see. Believe, focus, achieve. Empathy seems to be a missing culture among Nigerians. Majority of the challenges faced in the country can be linked to lack of empathy. Inhumanity has gradually replaced compassion. In this edition of I Am Change podcast, Judith PEARCE is back again as she talks about the role of empathy in our society and how important it is to develop this major component of emotional intelligence. She is an emotional intelligence practitioner and a strategic thinker. Joyce Ometu is my name, and I'm your host. It's good to have you back on I Am Change podcast.
It's good to be back.
All right. The last time you were here, we spoke extensively on the topic emotional intelligence, and we've learned what it is and how it directly impacts so many areas of our lives, including our relationship, career successes, business successes, and all of that. So moving on today, we will attempt to explore one of the key components, if I may say, of emotional intelligence, which is empathy. Can you describe the concept of empathy?
Yes, empathy is something that is based on compassion. And what drives empathy is compassion. And that actually defines our humanity to a large extent.
Okay.
Now, what is empathy? I'll give you a definition by Joshua Friedman of the 6 Seconds Institute.
All right.
It says it is seeing with the other person's eyes, hearing with the other person's ears, and feeling with the other person's heart. You know, empathy derived from the Greek word empathia. And empathia means feeling into.
Okay.
You know, so it's not sympathy. Sympathy is identifying somebody's predicament, but not engaging emotionally. You're not feeling into it.
Okay.
Now, empathy evolves because at the beginning of empathy, we have the cognitive empathy.
Okay, what's that?
Cognitive empathy has to do with empathy by thought.
Okay.
You know, you see and identify that this person, you know, has this issue.
Right.
But you don't connect to their emotions. You know? Now, that is not good enough.
Okay.
Because that one is almost actually
like sympathy,
a glorified form of sympathy.
Sympathy, yeah.
But then it evolves into emotional empathy.
Okay.
And in that case, you identify with the person and then you connect, you engage your emotions, you feel into it.
Right.
Which is also not good enough because you could get emotional and get carried away by your own emotions, and you will now start crying more than the bereaved.
Absolutely.
You remember that sometimes when you go to pay a condolence visit, you will see some people who have come to console the person who is bereaved, crying more than the bereaved, and the bereaved is now consoling them.
Right.
That is like emotional empathy. And those people, you find them at burials, they are rolling on the ground. Some of them are professional mourners.
Right.
They roll on the ground, cry everywhere, and then you find them finally with a big bowl of rice, then you know that it's an act.
That's right.
Then, since it's not good enough, it has to evolve into the third category of, you know, empathy, you know, which is the compassionate empathy. Now, the compassionate empathy is you identify with the person, the challenge, you engage with their emotions.
Right.
I mean, put yourself in their shoes.
Okay.
And, you know, it works in two ways. It's either you've actually been through what they are going through.
Okay.
For instance, in the case of bereavement, somebody loses their father and you have lost your father. You will be able to understand what they are feeling.
Right.
Or sometimes you may not have even lost your, but you are imagining the pain, you know, that the father's demise has is having on them.
On them, yeah.
But then you don't stop there.
Okay.
Compassionate empathy goes, on to do something that will make things easy for the person. What can I do to help? That's the question compassionate empathy asks.
Okay.
And so maybe in the case of bereavement, for instance, you find that there are some people that come, they don't just sit down with the person, they offer their shoulder for the person to cry.
Yeah.
They come with food, drinks, because somebody who has lost a loved one is not necessarily thinking of going to the market to cook soup.
Right. So
they come with things. You find some people will be bringing food every day. Exactly. Let me just help them at this period. And that is really, so empathy really stems from compassion. That is the concept of empathy. Just
all right,
feeling into someone's situation.
All right. So is empathy a teachable or learnable skill, or is it something one is born with?
I will say both.
Okay.
I'll say both. All skills are learnable, actually.
Right.
But there are some that, like this empathy, is something that people begin to notice from childhood.
Okay.
For instance, you find that a baby typically will cry when another baby starts to cry.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even know why. But they just hear a baby crying and they start to cry. Or they see a baby fall down. And in their minds, it's as if it is them. Typically, babies in the range of, 0 to 1 year, 1.5 year old, do that a lot.
Right.
Sometimes it is their mom they see crying. And they just join solidarity. And they start to cry. There are two schools of thought. Some people think it's just a learnable skill.
Right.
Some other school of thought think that, it's something that is passed on, depending on, where somebody grew up.
Okay.
And
so your environment can affect.
Yes. So it's both.
Okay.
But by and large, it's a learnable skill. Yeah.
Okay. So why is it so important to learn or develop empathy?
It's so important because it's the missing link in so many things. Empathy is part of one of the pillars of emotional intelligence that has to do with how you relate with people. Right. It has to do with how you relate, do you manage your teams in the office, how you relate with people of other cultures. It's deeply rooted in, being able to read, between the lines, being able to see what is not being said, being able to connect to somebody on a deeper level than what they are saying. You find out sometimes somebody, I'm having my birthday party next week. Yeah. Will you come? Meanwhile, maybe you have something to do on that day. Or you don't just like to dress up to go out. But you don't want to offend me. Your mouth is saying yes, but your body language
saying something different.
And when you come to that kind of crossroad, pick the body language. The body language is telling the correct thing. Okay. So it's something that is so important. It's important in business. Right. It's important in romance. Okay. In love.
Do you want to expand on that?
Well, it's just really feeling the heart of the other person.
Okay.
And being able to connect on that level.
Right.
And a lot of relationships have problems because maybe one partner is not empathetic enough.
Okay.
They cannot connect to what the person is feeling. There are some people that, a friend of mine told me that her husband is always sad when she's excited or she's happy. Anything she does or anything that will happen that will bring her joy, he doesn't connect to it very well. So in empathy, for instance, a man wants to take his wife out for dinner.
Right.
And women are very guilty of this a lot of the times. They go to the restaurant and they're calculating how much they could have saved.
Right.
This one, 10,000. Haba.
Which is normal.
It's so expensive. I will have used that for a month.
Yeah.
But there are some women who would rather just go and eat and have a good time and not even think about the cost. And somebody who is highly empathetic can connect to that and say, okay, if I do this, if I take her out, it will make her happy.
Right.
And that forges a deeper connection in that relationship. So empathy is important in romance, love relationship, is important in business relationships, managing your teams, cross-national and cross-cultural businesses. For instance, you live here and go to Japan for a business. The way of life of the people there is not the same way the Americans live their life. It's not the same way Nigerians live their life. So empathy helps you to be able to read all those body language. Okay. Even if you don't even know about the culture. There was an example of a team from America who went to make a presentation in Japan. Okay. For a business deal.
Right.
And after making the presentation, the people kept quiet.
Okay.
In fact, the American team, they were distraught. They were distressed. They were like, you know what? Let's get out of here.
Why?
Because if you made such a presentation in America, where they were coming from, by the time they were on the last slide, there will be so many hands up wanting to ask questions and all of that. But this man just kept quiet, and he was thinking about it and meditating and ruminating in his mind. And the team leader was able to read in his body language that he was interested, and so she was trying to calm them down and say, you know what, just guys, wait. After a very long time, when he finally found his voice, he gave them the business. So it helps you to be able to feel into the person's heart, feel into what the person's mind is saying. And it's good it's very important in sales, in marketing, especially with services. How am I going to sell my emotional intelligence to you? I need to get into your mind and make you believe that you actually need this thing. You actually need this thing. I need to make it appeal to you. I need to make you now realize that I actually have a problem with anger. Yeah. Maybe I should get some coaching sessions with Judith,
Right, true.
So it's very good for business relationships, family relationships. Somebody was sharing the other day, and his wife called him to report their daughter that she's not eating her food. Okay. And he comes in and he says, oh, try and eat your food. I'll give you whatever you want when you finish eating the food. She said, whatever I want. He said yes. And this girl is, I think, 2.5 or 3.
Okay.
You give me whatever I want. He said yes. She finished eating the food. And then they now asked her what she wants. And they were expecting, I want ice cream, I want a doll, I want this.
Yes.
And she said she wants to cut her hair.
Wow.
There was calamity in the house that day. The mother protested. The grandmother protested. Even the father protested. They said, why don't you choose something else? He said, no, Daddy, you said you will give me whatever I want. And it was painful because she has such beautiful hair. They had started growing it. But the man now said to them, you know what, we promised her. We have to show integrity. He took her to the barber. They shaved. She didn't just want the haircut. She wanted her hair shaved Kojak.
Completely.
Gorimakba. And they did that. And they went to school the next day. He took her to school the next day. He now discovered why she wanted to shave her hair. Because there was this boy in her class who is her friend. Okay. Who'd been diagnosed with, I think, leukemia or something. Oh. And who had been undergoing chemotherapy. And he'd lost all his hair.
I get it.
So this girl, this 2.5, had felt into his situation because already people were laughing at, they don't know better. Oh. The children don't know why his hair is like that. So they're already making fun of him and laughing. And this girl cut her hair And the teacher was in tears. Wow. So everybody was like, They learned a big lesson that day. She just wanted to support him as her friend so that they would not laugh at him. And even if they were going to laugh at him, they would laugh at both of them.
That's real empathy in play.
Yeah. So she did something that will... when the boy is going to school in the morning, he will say, he's not only me with this kind of hair. That is what empathy is really about.
All right, let's go to the flip side. Where there is no empathy, what are the results?
We see it every day. When there's no empathy, it means that something has been broken in the humanity of a person. The person doesn't have the ability to feel.
Right.
And that's why we end up with narcissists, the sociopaths, and psychopaths in extreme cases. That's why you see rapists, murderers, people that just kill people, They don't feel anything. So a lack of empathy. In the wake of the xenophobic attacks, let's look at that as a case study. Right. Now, if the people killing people in South Africa had empathy, they will not.
True.
If the people going into shops in South Africa, other foreigners' shops, to burn the shops, put themselves in the shoes of the owner of the shops, they will not do it. Because if you have a shop and they burn it, some people never recover from that. They die. That's true. You have goods worth 10 million, 20 million. You wake up one day, you go, the shop has been burnt. Your immediate thought is, where do I
start from?
That could lead to depression. You start ideating suicide and say, why don't I just end it? Who will I go and talk to? And on the other side, even the reprisal attack on some South African establishments here in Nigeria does not show that we are empathetic, or the people who went into ShopRite and Nowhere to cut away televisions and other things, they didn't put themselves for once in the shoes of the shop owners.
And even the staff.
Yes, and even the staff, because
they could lose their jobs too as well.
Yes, there is a very high likelihood that not all the shops will recover.
Right.
Not all of them, by the way, may have been insured.
That's true.
Not all of them will be able to regather that capital or will be compensated. And if the shop closed down, all the staff have lost their jobs. So if somebody who is looting for 1 minute had thought about it and put his or herself in that position of the shop owner, they will not have done what they did.
Absolutely.
So it's you see the lack of it in the way we treat others. And many times you find out that people cannot take half of what they dish out. The lack of empathy is a reason why there are a lot of wars. It's a reason why we are not understanding ourselves, because we are not seeing, the other person's point of view. And really, we don't have to agree with, I don't have to agree with your point of view. Because you are entitled to your opinion.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also don't have to agree with my point of view. So, on a particular issue, you have an opinion, I have an opinion. That means there are two distinct opinions on one subject. A third person might come in and have a different opinion from your opinion or my opinion. It does not make the person wrong. So perceptions are different. And what emotional intelligence does is to teach you to accommodate the other person's perception or opinion.
Okay, so let's connect empathy now with emotional intelligence. What's the role of empathy in emotional intelligence?
It's so critical. It's one of the pillars on which emotional intelligence stands. If you look at whatever model you are looking at, if you are looking at the Daniel Goleman's model, he defined emotional intelligence and broke it into, 5 pillars.
Okay.
Self-awareness, that is knowing yourself, coming to terms with how you feel at any point in time, and knowing how others also feel. Okay. He talked about self-regulation, that's managing and directing yourself. You know, he talked about motivation. That is, your motivation has to come from within. It shouldn't depend on external factors or external threats. Then he talked about empathy and social skills. Now, 1, 2, 3 deal with the person within. 4 and 5, empathy and social skills, deals with relationships with other people. So it is critical. It's the basis. You know, when I was defining emotional intelligence, I said it is the blending of thinking and feeling to achieve a functional outcome. So that feeling part is where empathy comes in. You know, so it's very critical. That's the Daniel Gold. Even when you look at the Joshua Friedman's model, which is the 6 seconds, you know, he founded, his own model is founded on 3 pillars. Self-direction, self-awareness, which is knowing yourself. Self-management, which is choosing yourself. And then self-direction, you know, which is, you know, has to do with increasing empathy and pursuing noble goals. So empathy is one of the pillars. When you have known yourself, you've learned how to manage yourself, how to direct yourself. You now have practiced on yourself. You now begin to notice these things in other people. You know, and so it's empathy helps you in relationships. It helps you to be able to relate with other people, and that is the basis for what? Marriage, for business,
right?
For government. You know, everything.
Okay, so how vital is emotional intelligence and empathy now as regards social functioning?
Well, I mean, we've been saying it since we started.
Yes,
it's so important. We need to reconnect with our humanity. What you see in society today is largely a result of, you know, lack of empathy. What you see, people killing each other, rape is on the increase, crime is on the increase. Yes, there are other causes, you know, like poverty, economic factors.
Okay, so moving on, do you think Nigerian leaders lack empathy on the situation an ordinary citizen is or find themselves in?
That's a tough one, because sometimes they may not even be aware of the situations the citizens are in. It's very easy to sit in the office and not know what is happening out there. And to a large extent, the leadership relies on staff, people working with them, their assistants, their aides, to bring information from the field to them. So they rely on that intelligence and many times make decisions based on the intelligence reports they get. And that's why sometimes you find out that an administration is praising itself for doing well, whereas the reality on the ground is that the generality of Nigerians are suffering. There is no food. People are not able to feed themselves any longer. And, you know, unemployment is at an all-time high, you know. So on the one hand, they may not really know what is on ground. But on the other hand, you know, if you had a plan and if you have taken into consideration that you will provide X, Y, and Z for your people,
right,
you should be able to know whether it's happening or not.
Okay.
And so there's that emotional intelligence deficit of not being able to read the people. I mean, in recent times, we have heard of people stoning some leaders when they go some places.
That's right.
You know, it is imperative for the leaders to identify, to increase empathy, to be able to identify with the needs of the people, to be able to get into the heart of the people, to actually know what is happening, you know, and be able to even proceed from there to provide what will make the situation better. You know, we've been talking about poverty alleviation, poverty. Why don't we talk about wealth creation? Why don't we have a focus of creating, more revenue? Why are we waiting till everything is bad? And then we are not talking poverty alleviation, and then we go, when it's political time, again, we'll go and give people salt and onions, and then...
That's what I was even driving at. Because
on the part of the government, there's no empathy.
Yeah.
They cannot feel what the people are feeling. Even on the part of the people as well, they are not emotionally intelligent. I mean, there is a deficit.
Okay.
Because somebody cannot continue to fool you every 4 years, and you fall into the trap.
Right.
You can't continue to sell your conscience for a morsel of porridge. You can't continue to accept whatever is thrown at you. Leadership has a responsibility to provide for the people, but followership also has a responsibility to hold their leaders to account. So the leadership does not have empathy. They may have it in their intentions, but in their actions, we are not feeling that they are feeling our hearts. Because if they are really feeling the way the average Nigeria is feeling, then certain things should have changed by now.
Yeah. So what you are saying is, if Nigerian leaders will develop empathy, things will be a lot better.
Of course.
All right.
Of course.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Any final words?
I would like to encourage everybody to always think about the next person. Don't do unto others what you will not want them to do unto you. And also, there's this American Indian proverb, I think, or American Chinese proverb that says, never judge a man until you have walked a mile in his moccasins. Thank you very much.
It's so glad to have you again on I Am Change podcast. You've spoken so well on the said topic, empathy, and I'm sure our listener out there must have learned one or two things. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and we're always willing to come back anytime.
Thank you so much. We've been discussing with Judith PEARCE on the importance of empathy, a component of emotional intelligence. Humanity and compassion is the first step to change. Before you criticize someone, try walking a mile in his or her shoes. You've been listening to I Am Change podcast. I'm Joyce Ometu. Thank you so much for listening.